Sure. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's cool to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a computer engineer or starting computer engineer, software engineer at Intuit in the Mountain View location, which is right in the heart of Silicon Valley, across the street from Google. I went to Ryerson University, just graduated this year, class of 2018. I hope I got that right. And yeah, I met Anthony through Ryerson, and he helped me out a lot. So figured I'd come on here and share the knowledge a little bit.
Awesome. Cool. So, the reason you're on here, I guess like everyone else knows, is because you've done something amazing, which is you've managed to secure yourself pretty much a spot in Silicon Valley and with a software engineering degree. When did you exactly start programming?
Grade 11. So I guess that was 6 years ago.
Okay. And
we had a computer science course.
And were you always like super serious about it, or when did you decide that it was what you wanted to pursue and you set your sights on a job in Silicon Valley?
Well, in grade 11, I guess so up until grade 10, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I said I kind of wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be an engineer because my brother was an engineer. And then towards grade 8, I decided I kind of wanted to do music because I really like playing the drums. And then grade 9 and 10, I took music courses. And instead of taking a computer engineering course, I took a music course. And I realized that I hated reading sheet music because it was boring compared to just playing by ear, which is what I love to do. And decided that wasn't for me. So grade 11, I took a computer science course, one of my 2 electives that year, pretty much, because I had to take physics, chemistry, and math. So I took a computer science course, and I really liked it because it kind of did everything that I love doing. It did math, and it did problem solving, and I got to do cool stuff. So grade 11, I said, this is something I want to pursue. And then grade 12, I took the part 2 of the same course. And I decided that I was still really enjoying it because I was still learning cool stuff. And decided to go into computer engineering instead of computer science because I'm stupid and I hate myself. But, the real reason is because I figured I could do more with a computer engineering degree. And at the time, I didn't really like hardware. But I thought if I take computer science courses and I wish I'd done hardware, then I'm screwed. But if I take computer engineering and I wish I'd taken software, then I'm fine. So it was like, the safer bet was to do computer engineering. And since grade 11, I'd been saying I wanted to move to California. So it was just an obvious choice.
So we went to school together at Ryerson, and I noticed there are a lot of students in that same situation where they want to go into software engineering, but they're in a computer engineering program. And there's not very much support in the computer engineering program for really making that transition. How did you sort of navigate it, or what did you have to do to sort of make up for that deficit of education that computer science were getting that you weren't?
To be completely honest, throughout my 4 years of computer engineering, I learned pretty much nothing new in terms of coding that I didn't learn in high school. Wow. The only things that that I learned that was new was maybe like languages, but even that you can self-teach yourself a language in like a weekend. As long as you know one language already, teaching yourself a language isn't hard. The other thing was like network security stuff. I hadn't really done that. And a little bit of operating systems, but even that, like, there's the basic principles of programming are like they apply to everything, right? And it's just going over that same thing over and over again. So it wasn't really anything new. I know that the computer science kids got to do a lot more cool stuff, but at the end of the day, like the basics is what they're looking for at jobs. So like, if I didn't know maybe the encryption course that a computer science kid took, I still knew all the algorithm courses that a computer science kid took because we had to take the same courses for algorithms. So like the really practical stuff was still taught to us, or if it wasn't taught to us, it wasn't taught to the computer science kids either.
Wow. Okay. So I know a lot of people in the Forge are based outside of the Valley, and you went from Toronto to the Valley. How was that for your internship? How was that experience, and what really stood out to you, and what did you like about it? What didn't you like?
So I guess I'll start with what I didn't like, because I guess that's easier. What I didn't like was being away from home. That was probably the hardest part. Missing my friends and family pretty much, because I think like something that had to do with it is a lot of my friends went away for school. So really the only times I got to see them was during the summer previously. And then that like time that I would get to see them and hang out with them, they'd all be hanging out with each other and I wouldn't be there because I was in California. So like seeing like pictures on Instagram, Snapchat stories, talking to my buddies, they'll be like, we had a great time last night, went to this bar and you'll never guess what this guy did. And like, I'm like, I wish I could have been there. Right. So like that was probably the worst part of it. The best parts though were like living on my own for the first time. Like Intuit was great. Like absolutely love the company. The culture's amazing. Fit exactly what I wanted it to be. You know, the work-life balance was amazing. I got to visit San Francisco anytime I wanted to. They gave us a rental car to work with, so I was able to drive up and down the coast. I met a bunch of new people. They were really good about networking events and all that. So I got to make sure that, you know, I didn't really waste any of my time. And it wasn't like a head down work experience. It was like a holy crap, look at everyone around me experience, which was really great.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you had an amazing time there. And I mean, would you recommend a lot of people, if they have the opportunity, going for an internship like abroad instead of maybe staying in their home city and doing an internship there?
Yes, so with Intuit, and I've said this to people before, I don't think I've said this to you, but I would have done Intuit's internship if they didn't pay me. If it was like, we'll pay for your expenses, like we'll fly you out, cover housing, food, and transportation, and like everything else you have to pay for, I still would have done it. So, I mean, like it was that good that I would highly recommend it to anyone who even gets like the opportunity. It's honestly like, people will say that going away for school is an experience, and like, yes, it is. I didn't do it, but like, I know speaking to other people that it is. But going like the internship abroad, because you're making money too, right? When you go away for school, everyone's focused on saving money, and meanwhile, you know, I'm like, I have this money to spare, and I'm in California, so what am I gonna do? You know, maybe I'll go to a state game, right? Like, I'll go to a Giants game. So it's just like, it's honestly 100% recommended. One of the things that might have biased me was that Intuit had a really big intern cohort, I guess you would call it. Mm-hmm. So like, there was a large amount of us, which made it a lot easier to like find people that I got along with. So I don't know, maybe smaller companies that were like 10 interns, I might not have enjoyed as much, but there was like over 100 interns, and it was great.
Wow.
So yes, highly recommend.
Wow. To say something like you would go there and work for free, I think that speaks volumes about the experience, because I know a lot of people wouldn't consider doing something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the other thing that helps with that is I did work for free the summer before. So like I had experience working for free, and like, as much as it sucks, you don't realize how terrible doing nothing at home is all day until you like do it for 2 months. Because the first month you're like, I can just watch Netflix, and then you get to a month and you're like, I've already watched everything on Netflix, and you just don't know what to do with yourself anymore. So
all right, I know we're a bit strapped for time, so I want to jump right into some of the questions we had submitted. Okay. So Meet asks, when did you start practicing for your job interview, and how many hours a day did you spend?
So, well, I guess I didn't really tell the story, but what happened with me was I got an interview at Facebook, and as soon as I got the email that I got the interview at Facebook, I was in third year, and I had classes most days from like 8 to 4. And I'd been paying attention to all my courses. I was doing like relatively well because I wanted to get good grades that year. And I just stopped paying attention in every single one of my classes. And every single one of my classes, I would have a notebook, and I would have like a coding questions book. And I would be doing the solutions on pen and paper. Every single one I could. Wow. Like just grinding through all of them. So I'd practice like 4 hours a day probably on pencil and on like paper, and then I would read on the train, like Algorithms in a Nutshell, something like that, some coding books. And then I'd get home and I would look up programming questions from like Glassdoor, and I would do those too. And I did that for like a week leading up to the interview. And then of course I bombed the interview. And pretty much every time I got an interview, it was like a solid 2 to 4 hours a day of grinding programming questions. But it wouldn't usually be like, the one thing I would recommend very highly, I don't know if this is a question later, is when you're doing it, never sit there for 4 hours straight and do programming questions. That's like, you're going to burn out. what I highly recommend doing, and which is what I did, was you sit down, look at a question, try and solve it. If you can't solve it, stop, like get up, go for a run, go to the gym, do something else, like take your mind off of it, let it kind of like sit in the back of your mind for a bit. Looking at those solutions like the worst thing you can do, because it's just like, you're like, oh, I could have gotten that if I just spent a little bit more time on it. And realistically, like, would you have? That's something you need to figure out for yourself, right? So always don't bring yourself out on the programming questions, and give yourself a little bit of time to breathe and think about the process.
Wow. All right. So the next question, also from Meet, is what was the interview process like for Intuit?
So it was a behavioral phone screen, in which they were kind of like, it was, if you've ever done a behavioral interview program, or interview before, you'll know, but it was pretty much like, tell me about your resume, tell me about a time you worked in a team, tell me about this, tell me about that, like all those types of questions. You can find like the most common behavioral questions on the internet. And that was pretty straightforward. Behavioral interviews are actually, in my opinion, what usually ruin engineers, because we're generally pretty good at solving technical problems, and then you talk to us and you're like, these people are really weird. And you need to be able to get past that. You need the people skills to get past that part, essentially. And so we had the behavioral interview, and then there was a long period because of visa issues where they wouldn't interview me because they didn't know if I could get a visa, and then they didn't know if I could get a visa because I didn't have an offer. So there was like this, I guess, catch-22. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but so eventually they got back to me, and I did a video interview, kind of like, it was with a program they use internally called Blue Jeans, but it was pretty much kind of like a Skype interview, and it was on video. And small tip for video interviews, always like dress fancily, like wear like a dress shirt, maybe not like full suit, but wear a dress shirt, look good. And when you look good, you feel good, and confidence is really important. So always, so the technical interview was the Blue Jeans call, and that was pretty straightforward. I don't want to go too much into the questions, but it was resume rundown / projects I've worked on, a rough design question where they pretty much said like, hey, what would be your thought process for designing something like this? And then I gave them my thought process, and they asked me some questions. I answered the questions, and then there was one coding challenge question, and that was the interview.
Okay, you talked a lot about behavioral questions sort of ruining engineers. And I know it's not something that a lot of engineers put emphasis on, but how would you recommend, I guess, if you're lacking the people skills or the the soft skills that they look for in behavioral interviews, how would you recommend an engineer like sort of verse themselves on it?
So pretty simple, actually, is practice. And there's no shortcut. Like, there's no secret to anything. You just need practice. Like, anyone who tells you there's a shortcut to getting good at something is wrong, and you need practice. Like, putting hours in is the most effective way you can get good at anything. With that in mind, like, good practice is important. So what things I recommend doing are, A, kind of figuring out what answers are good answers. As an example, if they ask you to talk about a time when you worked in a team, and you say, well, this one time I had a team project, but I did the whole thing by myself because I thought it'd be easier. That's a bad idea. Don't do that. That's personal experience. Get other people to interview you. It's one thing to prep the answers in your head, and it's another to say them out loud. So I notice this a lot. Like, I get my brother, I do practice interviews with my brother, like my friends. And he would ask me a question, and I'd be like, okay, this is the answer that I have. Like, have it planned out, have it memorized, like, bam. And I would say it, and then there would be like a moment of silence, and I would just like word vomit out extra stuff. And he'd be like, why did you keep going? I was like, I don't know. It was just quiet, and I needed to keep going, right? So practice with other people, do mock interviews, and then figure out what kind of answers are good. So like reading behavioral interview blogs or like stuff like that.
Okay, wow. So the next question comes from Manikandan, and his question is, what are your top resources and things that you use the most to practice?
So I used LeetCode, I believe. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but LeetCode is the one where you can sign up and they have specific interview questions from specific companies, right?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, so I used LeetCode a lot. Not so much for my first interview, because I was really broke for my Intuit interviews. So I didn't really think I could spare the membership fee. But then when I was interviewing again this year, I got the money out for it, and it was really worth it. I definitely learned a lot from it, so that was good. Other than that, like the programming interview is exposed. That one's really good. And what's cracking the coding interview and like the cracking the X interview are all really
good. Okay. So our next question is from Tabish, and he says, who and how did you network? Or who did you network with and how did you network with? And did you go out of your way to introduce yourself to a lot of different people?
Yeah, so I networked a lot with Anthony, actually. He's pretty much the reason I got my first job, because I was able to connect with him, and he was able to kind of give me a little bit of info and help put my name through for Intuit. And so the networking was generally by like friends of friends. That's like the best way to meet people, is like, I know this person, can you introduce me to this person? Or, hey, like you and this person would get along really well, let me introduce you to them, like that kind of stuff. In fact, the reason I met Anthony was because we both played StarCraft, and my brother-in-law is his cousin. So he was like, hey, my cousin's the captain of the StarCraft team. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Let me like just introduce him to me. So it was like really, really random chance that it happened. But when I was at Intuit, literally I'm terribly shy, like very shy person. And I was just like, I'm just going to try and not be shy. I'm doing my best to not be shy. So I would like, if I was sitting at a table, I would find a way to introduce myself or tell a stupid story. Like, there is no easier way to break a silence than to make people laugh at you, right? Like, easiest way to do it is to make people laugh. So getting like people comfortable is simple as making them laugh, telling like a stupid joke about yourself or something like that. So it's really on you, and it's something you have to practice. I still am not great at it in like a lot of situations, but I've found myself getting better just through practice, repeated practice. Just don't be afraid to be like, hey, my name's insert name here. My name's Peter, right? Like, how's it going? And if it doesn't work, well, then that person's probably just a jerk and didn't want to talk to you. They're having a bad day. It's not like they're going to be like, can you believe that guy? He tried to talk to me. Pfft. I think that's not, people don't work like that, right? So.
Right. And you ended up meeting the CEO, if I recall, right?
Yeah. So this was actually something that Anthony recommended. And one of the things that, I'm just going to hold my phone because it keeps on slipping and it's bothering me. So Anthony said that I should email the CEO and ask him to grab lunch. And that's a terrible idea. It's never going to work. And Anthony was like, no, just trust me, do it. It's fine, do it. Like, okay, if you say so. So I emailed Brad Smith, the CEO of Intuit, and I said, hey, I'd love to grab lunch with you. And I'd like to talk about X, Y, Z. And he said, well, that's great, but other interns have emailed me as well. I'm actually setting up a lunch to meet a bunch of interns. Would you like to come? I was like, yes, please. And so we had about an hour lunch. And something Anthony said to me, which actually made me laugh, was he was like, Brad Smith makes however much a year, like $12 million a year. And so that means like down to the minute he makes like this much. So what's your question that's going to be worth X amount of dollars? I was like, and then I put a bunch of questions. So yeah, he taught me a lot. Definitely highly recommend like just meeting people that are smarter than you, more higher up than you. And if they're not smarter than you and they're more higher up than you, then you're wrong and they're smarter than you.
Oh man, I like that. That's good. So, all right, cool. So another question from Tabish is, what kind of experience do you recommend having in order to land a job?
Any sort of experience that is in the related field. If that means that you had to do what I do and work for free at a company where you take images of food and you draw boxes on it and then say, this is this kind of food, then you do that. Like you just, honestly, I had worked at a startup. It's called Yar. They're still in Toronto, actually, Yar.ai. They're building an artificial intelligence system, and they were doing image recognition for mobile platforms. And so I had to literally draw boxes on Instagram pictures and say, this is McDonald's. This is a McDonald's logo. These are McDonald's fries. This is an In-N-Out burger. This is In-N-Out burger fries. This is In-N-Out logo. And I did that for 2 months straight. But on my resume, I had assisted in the training and development of a artificially intelligent system. And every single interview without fail, they would ask me. And nine out of 10 people I talked to at career fairs were like, this is really cool. Tell me about it. So it's like anything, even if it's like entry level, like you're getting coffee first, you get coffee for developers, and then you ask them about the work they're doing and see if you can help somehow. Like anything in the field. And that, like, again, if that means you have to work for free, then work. Like if you think about it in the long term, let's say you work for minimum wage now $15 an hour, right? You work 40 hours a week over the course of, let's say, 3.5 months, which is what? That's 4 weeks a month. So 14 months ish. So you're getting like 40 times 14 is like 64. Is that right? No, whatever it is, whatever the math is. 40 times 14 is 66. I don't know. It's fine. Whatever the number. I'm doing math. Never do math live. 460 or something. 446, something like that. Anyways, 400. Ignoring my terrible ability to do math live, is like, that's, you're going to be making, let's say you make $10,000 over the, and then you compare that to, I made $10,000 over the summer, and then I started working. I made $10,000 over the summer, third year, and then I started working for $50,000 a year first year, and then someone else made no money third year, but then their first year working, they're making $80,000 a year. Well, it's like, well, I think I'd rather make $20,000, $20 or $30,000 more a year for coming out of university than making an extra $10,000 one year. So,
okay. The final question we have here is from Meet, and he says, I might have an interview soon, according to HR, to one of the companies he applied to. Is there anything he should watch out for?
Always. Okay, so first of all, companies don't want to trick you, so they're not going to ask you stupid questions. And if they ask you a stupid question, then answer it smartly. But don't be weird. Being weird and like pretending you're better than the question or acting like you're better than the question will get you kicked out very quickly. Mm-hmm. Be nice and talk through all your solutions. If they say you're wrong, then you're probably wrong. Or if they're like, I don't know about that, you're probably wrong as well. Or if they make you explain your reasoning, always question your own reasoning too. Always do edge case testing, which is super useful. If you don't know what edge case testing is, look it up. It's super important for programming. What else? Know the company's mission statement. That's really important. Do your research on the company. Tricks you should look out for. If they ask you a question and you don't know how to answer it whatsoever, be very upfront and say you don't know how to answer it. Ask for clarifying questions. Like one of the what's it called? One of the most like common questions or like killer questions that people get are things like, how many tennis balls can you fit inside of an apartment? And people are like, I don't know. And in reality, they don't really care if you get the right answer. They care about your thought process.
Wow. All right. Yeah, that's some pretty good stuff. And just right before you leave, what final advice, final words do you have for everyone watching and everyone that's going to be watching this in terms of sort of lining their dream career up, getting a job, and like settling down type of thing?
Okay, so I guess 3 pieces of it. I'm going to start with 2, and then if I think of a third one, I'm going to say it. The first piece of advice is never, ever take advice from someone without thoroughly considering it yourself. So never follow someone blindly. That includes this. Second piece of advice is the person that you decide to marry is the most important decision you will make in your life. And I guess the third piece of wisdom is be a rock star and do your best.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Peter. Thank you so much for coming on and spitting out some straight fire and some good old wisdom. And yeah, just being you and doing such a great job. Congratulations again on your full-time role.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to cut the stream here. Thanks, everyone, for watching. The VOD will be up within the next couple of days. And if you have any questions, Peter is in the group, so feel free to tag him in any questions you might have or shoot him a message.